Dear friends, welcome back to Automate with Rakesh. Now we have covered our very first topic in the series, Advanced UI Automation. Now we will get on to Advanced Control Flow. In this topic, describe the components of state machine. This is one of the area and when they should be used in projects. Okay, when you should use state machine. Build projects using state machine. So basically this will be more around your state machine topic. Now if you go to Academy, which course should you search for? First you type state machine in under the course, okay, in the Academy course, state machine. Now here you find three different ones at the moment. Now this one, which is of 2022.10, on which our exam would appear, right? Our exam is of 2000. Now here you find that if you go through this particular course, in the main page, I have already enrolled. While enrolling, you will be able to find the overview. Let me show you. Here you can see this course was built using 2022.10 product version of UiPath Studio and is applicable for newer versions as well. So our exam is based on this 2022.10, right? So this is the appropriate topic you may pick. Now let me resume the course and I am going to go through the very first topic in state machine around the layouts. What are the different layouts we have in UiPath and when they should be used? So this is very important. Let's go through this. There are a couple of questions also given here we will discuss. Now here the question is which layout you should pick on a given situation. Okay, that is the question. That kind of a question would be framed around this particular paragraph. So basically these are three different structures we have. UiPath provides three diagrams for structuring workflow files and integrating activities. These are sequence, flowchart, and state machine. Now sequence, there's an entire big paragraph. Now what is very important, I'm going to tell you. Sequences exhibit a straightforward linear representation. This word linear representation is very important. You might get a word saying linear representation, which one you should pick, sequence, flowchart, or state machine. Then you would say sequence. When you see this word linear, linear means what? Following seamlessly from top to bottom. Okay, this is also another word, top to bottom. These keywords are very important, making them ideal for uncomplicated scenarios. So complicated means it will be another out of these two, right? We will see that. Now uncomplicated scenarios, this is also one of the keyword, where activities follow a sequential order such as procedural workflows, and this is a bit of description given. For example, in UI automation tasks involving step-by-step navigation and typing sequences particularly useful. Their ease of assembly and comprehension makes them a preferred layout for the majority of the workflows. Now which layout? Let's say there is a project where linear representation is required, or it is an uncomplicated project. You have to follow a top to bottom approach. Then which sequence you should follow? Then you would say, which layout you will follow? You will say sequence. Got it? These are the couple of important words that I've highlighted for you. Let's move on to flowchart. Flowchart provide a enhanced flexibility in connecting activities and present workflows in a visually appealing two-dimensional format. Okay, now this could be a keyword, two-dimensional format. Their free-form nature makes them well suited for displaying decision points in a process. So if you have to deploy decision points, which would be the ideal one, then you would say flowchart. However, caution must be exercised as the use of arrows that can point anywhere may resemble unstructured go-to programming. Let's say you have seen a workflow, right? You can connect these points everywhere, so it can become slightly unstructured while you're design, potentially leading a chaotic interweaving of activities, especially in a larger workflow. So caution has to be exercised. That's all the point is all about. The most important aspect of flowchart is that unlike sequences, they present multiple branching logical operators. So this word is important, okay? multiple branching, logical operator. Logical operator means you are having this decision, flow decision, right? Flow decision activity. Hope you know this one, flow decision activity. So you can put some logical operators. That is all about multiple branching logical operator. This is a keyword. This enables you to create complex business process. So complex business process is also another keyword. So in sequence, what was the keyword? Uncomplicated scenarios, right? For complex business processes, flowchart is more ideal. And connect activities in multiple ways, flowchart tend to use. So you see the example of a flowchart, you see the example of a sequence, how it happens. Sequence means top to bottom. So these are the words: linear, top to bottom, uncomplicated. Flowchart means two-dimensional format, decision points in a process, multiple branching logical operators, complex business processes. Okay, so these are the keywords on which a question can be framed. Now let's move on to state machine. State machine. Some processes are better expressed as interconnected states which are executed again and again whenever necessary. A set of activities are performed in each state and then condition is evaluated to determine what state to transition. So the word transition, wherever you see, remember, think of state machine. Like your RE framework goes through transitions, right? From one state to another state. So that time, anytime this word transition comes, you should select state machine. For example, state machine with a minimum states idle, access granted. So they have given an example. If you are using an access card to bypass a gate, right? So you put a access card, your access card is valid, then it will grant you. So all of this example has been given. So this is a state machine. Okay, I'll go through the state machine activities in detail, but this is just a layout, which layout to select in which situation. So when it comes to transition, you go for state machine. When it comes to a complex business process, multiple logical operator, right? If you see these points, decision points in a process, two-dimensional format, you go with flowchart. Sequences, linear, top to bottom, uncomplicated. Okay, these are the couple of keywords you should remember. Now here they have framed few questions. Let's see how many of you can answer this. Layout that represent multiple branching logical operator. So I said, when you see multiple branching, the word branching logical operator comes means you should look for flow decision. Just now I covered, right? Flow chart, multiple branching logical operator. So this should be, your answer should be flow chart. Now if I click on submit, this is correct. Now let's see next question. The layout in UiPath Studio that enables a more compact representation of logic and is suitable for standard high-level process diagrams of transactional. So when you see transactional, I told you, right? When you see this one, transition, transaction and all that. So if you see that word, then which one you should select? State machine, transactions, right? So this should be, if you hit on submit, this is the right one. Now let's move on. So these are the couple of questions they had. So you got to know how to answer these questions. Now let's move on. I'm going to create a question around these topics. I'll put it in different ways and see if you could answer them. All right, so let's move on to the question section. In this, we are going to go through the layout diagram questions on advanced control workflow. So let's see some of the questions. Question number 1. Which statement about sequences in UiPath is not true? And I would highly recommend everyone to start commenting the right answer for the question. Please do participate. That would help you to sharpen your knowledge. Which statement about sequences in UiPath is not true? Now look at the questions. When you get this kind of questions, not true or true, you need to be very careful. So not true means you have to see which is the incorrect one. Option A. Sequences are ideal for step-by-step workflows and linear data entry process. They provide straightforward linear representation for easy comprehension. C. Sequences are incapable of handling error handling mechanism within an automation. D. They offer an uncomplicated top to bottom flow suitable for procedure workflow. Now these are the sentences written. Now let me know which is the right answer. First of all, I will explain. So take your time. Please do pause the video and comment your answer. I hope you have commented the answer. Let's see what is the right answer and why. So here the right answer is sequences are incapable of handling error. Is that true? It is not true. The first option, sequences are ideal for step-by-step workflows and linear data entry process, which is absolutely true. In this, you can see for sequences, linear and step-by-step workflow. This is the right option. Now look at the option B. They provide a straightforward linear representation of for easy comprehension. This is also right. Option D. They offer an uncomplicated top to bottom flow suitable for procedural workflows. Here you can see the word uncomplicated, right? There you go for a sequence. So here you can very well know why C is wrong. If you focus on this word, it proves advantages in implementing it. It is actually good when it comes to error handling, right? It has advantages. So the sentence is completely wrong when it said they offer an this one sequence are incapable of handling. So this is completely wrong. So your right answer is C. Now let's move on to our second question. Which statement about flowcharts in UiPath is not true? So it's talking about flowchart, which is not true. Flowcharts are well suited for workflows with multiple decision points due to their free-form structure. B, they allow for enhanced flexibility in connecting activities and present workflows visually. Flowcharts are similar to sequences and offer a linear representation of process. D. Flowcharts enable the creation of complex business processes through multiple branching logical operators. Now take your time and please do participate. Do comment what is the right answer for this question. Now the right answer for this question is flowcharts are similar to sequences. No, and offer a linear representation. This is wrong. Now let's look at other sentences. Are they right? For example, A. Flowcharts are well suited for workflows with multiple decision points. So here the keyword is multiple decision points. If you come to the flowchart, here you find multiple branching logical operators. That means decision points, right? So this is one of the area. Looking at the option B, they allow for enhanced flexibility in connecting activities and present workflow visually. So here if you read the sentence, flowcharts provide enhanced flexibility, right? You get flexibility in connecting activities and present workflows in a visually appealing. So you can see how I am highlighting the keywords, which becomes quite easy to remember these keywords. And when question comes, we can easily determine which is the right and wrong. So you got this enhanced flexibility, right? Visually, workflows visually. Okay. Now option D. Flowcharts enable the creation of complex business processes through multiple branching logical operators. We saw this word. Now it is talking about complex businesses. So if you again see here, there's a word called this enables you to create complex business processes and connect activities in multiple ways. Okay, these are the important keyword, complex business processes. You can use it for. So here you know why the C answer is a true, not a true statement. Now let's move on to our question number 3. Which statement is not true about state machines in UiPath? So please do participate. Again, comment for this question. A, B, C, D. A. State machines allow for design of event-driven processes based on finite number of states and transitions. So let's talk about finite number. So always remember to identify that keyword. B. They are suitable for high-level project organization for complex and continuous processes. C. State machine present interconnected states executed sequentially with no branching logic. D. They are commonly used in RPA framework like the Robotic Enterprise Framework, RE framework. Okay. So now tell me which one of these are correct and which one is the wrong one. So please do participate, do comment. It is required for you to really participate in all these question answer sessions that I have presented in the series. So do let me know what is the right answer. Okay. So I hope you have got the right answer and you have commented. So let's see, the right answer for this is state machines present interconnected states executed sequentially with no branching logic. So this is an incorrect statement. Now other statements are right. So it is talking about executed sequentially. No, state machines will have branching, right? So this is not right. Now option A, state machines allow for the design of event-driven processes based on finite number of states. Now if you come to state machine, here you can find it. Some of the processes are better expressed in interconnected states. Interconnected states. So all the states are interconnected. Okay. Like RE framework, which are executed again and again whenever necessary. A set of like the process state, get transaction state, runs again and again. A set of activities are performed. So here our keyword was finite number. Now look at for the finite number. If you do a Control F, and you should find that. Okay, so here it is. In Studio, state machine workflows layout lets you design event-driven processes based on a finite number of state and transition. Finite means limited, you have a specific number of states, defined number of states. Okay, so you got to know why that statement is correct. Moving on to the second one, they are suitable for high-level project organization for complex and continuous processes. Now this complex and continuous process, where do you get it? Now if you look at the same area, this layout should be used for high-level project organization. See, look at it. These words are important. And complex and continuous processes. Complex and continuous processes. Getting it? So this is one area. Now they are commonly used. Now you must be knowing, if you have used RE framework, state machine is the main topic or main component for RE framework. We are going to learn on advanced control flow. In your exam, you will get a lot of questions from advanced control flow. Now, what is advanced control flow? Here are two subtopics given for you. Describe the component of state machines. That means this topic is around state machines and when they should be used in projects. Build projects using state machine. So we have to learn around state machine in detail. Now let me show you. In Academy, if you go to the courses and then search for state machine. Here you would find some 3 different courses at the moment on state machine. Now which one to go for? The state machine in Studio 1 hour 25 minutes, which I see. If I click on this and then click on overview, I see this course was built using 2022.10 product version of UiPath Studio and it is applicable to newer version as well. So this is the course which I feel the ideal one to pick for. Now in this course, you enroll for this course and then get into the course. Now this course is of around 1 hour, 1 hour plus 1 hour 25 minutes, I think. Now in this one, which are the important topics or which are the important statements or the sentences which are important for the exam, I am going to cover. So let's get started. First of all, I'll give a demo. And once we complete the demo, then we will go through the academy and I'm going to highlight the important points for you, which will help you for your exam. So I hope you are ready. So do not skip the topic. Do not skip this video. Please do listen to me until the end. That is where you will gain complete knowledge on state machine. So let's get started. Now state machine. If you open your UiPath Studio and type state machine, in state machine, there are only 3 activities. How many activities? So all these important points, I'm going to type it on the notepad. You can make a note. So how many activities? There are 3 activities. Only 3 activities in total. Now what are those activities in state machine? The very first activity is state machine. The second activity is state. And the third activity is final state. So that means all you have to learn around these 3 activities: state machine, state and final state. Here you can see them. Now what is a state machine? Let's see first. First thing, in your designer panel, the very first activity, if you have to start your state machine project, The very first activity that you have to drag is your state machine activity, which will act like a scope. This is more like a scope. You might have worked on Excel scope, you might have worked on UI, UI browser open application activities, right? So all those activities are your scope activities. Similar way, for the state machine, this is the scope activity. That means all other activities will come inside this particular scope. All right. Now remember, the state machine scope activity contains a very important thing. This is called the start node. What is this? Called a start node. Simple. Now once you have the start node, the next thing that you have to drag and drop is your state activity. Now the state activity, you can drag and drop multiple state activities inside this. Okay, like that you can continue depending on different requirements. So let's say if you're dragging and dropping a couple of state activities, the activity which is connected to the start node is known as initial state. Very important key terms I'm giving you. This is known as initial state. Okay. Remember, the activity which is connected to the start node is known as initial state. So now we are learning the state. Okay. So what we are learning in the state? The first state activity connected to start node known as initial state. Is it clear? This is known as initial state because this is where your project would start. And remember, there is a concept. I'm going to talk about that later. If I say it now, it might confuse you. So for the moment, just remember, this is called initial state. Okay. Now let me delete all of this. Another activity that is called final state. There's another activity called final state. So what is the difference between initial state and final state? This is a very important question. Okay. Difference between initial state and final state. Difference between the state activity and final state activity. So what is the difference between the state activity and final state activity? Let me open the state activity. So I've given a name as initial state because it is connected to start node. Remember that. Otherwise, it is a state activity. Now, state activity contains three important components. What is that? Entry, exit, and transitions. So a state activity contains three important things. One is entry, second, exit, and the third, transition. Right now, if you look at the final state only contains entry. Remember that. Final state only contains entry. Getting it? Very important. This is also important from the exam point of view. The state activities contain three different components or sections: entry, exit section, and transition section. And the final state activity only contains what? Entry section. Now why entry? Because here it is going to end. It is not going to get into some other state. This is the end state, right? Now let's take some example to understand this. Okay. Now how to utilize this initial state, how to utilize the final state. So these are the three activities: state machine, state activity, and final state. Now how to utilize, let's understand in detail. Now for this, so you have made this note, right? Important notes. I'm going to erase this. Now here we will take some example. First thing, we will take an example of a customer care. Okay, there's a customer care where the customer will approach and he wanted to take ticket for bus or a ticket for train, or he want a ticket for flight. So these are the three options. So this customer care generally provides him the information. For bus ticket, you go to, right, the customer care generally provides him some information. What? You go to gate number 1, let's say. Train, you go to counter number. So based on the availability, who is sitting in the counter, let's say 1, 2, 3. Now for the flight, you should go to the counter number, let's say 160. So something like that. This is just, I'm creating a simple example so that you understand how to utilize state machine. Okay, pretty simple example to start with. Now what we will do, the moment you start your project, the project would enter to the initial state. The very first state activity is known as initial state. If I open this, there is an entry. Now in the entry, what I will do, I'll put a message box. Pretty simple example. You will first, why a simple example is required. Once you understand how it works, then you can go for complex to complex scenarios. But you should know how the flow works. When from entry it goes to exit, right? When from exit it goes to transition. If I leave it blank, what would happen? So all of these things are important to learn. Message box. Inside this, I'm saying, welcome to customer, travel agency customer care, let's say, travel agency customer care. And I'm saying to continue, to continue, click OK. And when you are writing bigger sentences, it's better to open in a bigger window. And I'm saying to continue, click on OK, or OK, to exit, click on cancel. So I'm giving two different options. Sometimes a customer might be by mistake he had come and you would like to come out of it. So you can click on cancel to exit. Now for that, so this is the message we have provided. For this message box, I'm going to create some two buttons, OK and cancel. Okay. Now what would happen the moment customer clicks on OK, then it should go to the next step. If he cancels, then it should go to the final state. Now for that, what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a but variable here and say choice. What is customer's choice? So here I've created a variable called choice. Done. Now I have kept a final state. Let's say the user is hitting on cancel, it should come to the final state. Now for that, the moment you connect a final state, so for example, this transition is not there. The moment you are connecting a state machine activity, a transition get automatically created. Remember this point. For example, the moment I'm connecting a final or whichever state activity or non, the moment you connect a transition automatically gets created, and you can rename these transitions. Now, if you open this initial state, you can see from this state, you have given a transition to move to final state. Now, the very important part, you have to define a condition when it should go. Only when the customer clicks on cancel, and whatever the customer is clicking, that is getting stored in a variable called choice. With that information, let's go to this transition, click on that. And here there's an area called condition. In this area, I'm going to simply say choice is equals to, I'm going to say cancel. If the choice is equal to cancel, then it should move to final state. So when it comes to final state, I'm showing another message here. In this message box, let me type thanks, visit again. Okay, some message I'm putting when they are exiting. Now let's first understand this, how it is working. Okay, I'm going to run this. And what happened? As per design, this is the message box which is appearing. Welcome to travel agency customer care. To continue, click on OK. To exit, click on cancel. So we have designed for cancel. If I click on cancel, now the choice variable will get that cancel value, and as per the condition, it is coming to the final state. Clear? So how it is coming to the final state, we have understood. So this condition, this transition is very important. The kind of condition you put here, if the condition meets, then only it will come here. Now, if the condition is OK, if the customer is clicking on OK, let's say the customer has clicked on OK, then I want him to go to a state where I'll ask few more questions to him. So what I will do, I will use another state activity. Okay, so I want, let me keep the final state somewhere here. Okay, so if customer say cancel, then it goes to final state. But below here, I'm going to connect one dot. So this is the second state. Now here I'm going to ask few questions. What are the question I'll ask? Click on it and use a message box. I'll use a message box. And here I will ask him, okay, select what kind of travel you need, bus travel or train, you would like to travel through train or you would like to travel through flight. So I think instead of a message box, input dialog box would do good. Input dialog box. Okay. Now if he has clicked on OK, then only it should come to the state. Now for it to come to the state, or let me keep the final state this side so that it doesn't confuse people. I'll connect this transition to, I'll connect it from here so that I understand. Okay, so it will come to this state, transition 2. Now here we will create some condition. So click on this transition 2, and the condition that we will keep, the choice, right? He made a choice which is not equals to OK, not equals to cancel, right? So choice is equals to, or you can say choice is equals to OK. If choice is equals to OK, then it should come to this state. If choice is OK, it should come to this state. Now in this particular state, I would like to show him some input dialog box where I'm saying how you would like to travel. Select how you would like to travel. This is the question I'm asking, and I'm going to show him some multiple choice. And here, let me give some options. So how do you write options here in this new input dialog box I'm going to show you? So how do you write? You first use because this is a string, okay? So you'll simply use a double quote, and inside the double quote, you will say, let's say bus is my first option, separated by semicolon, and then train, separated by semicolon, and then flight. Okay, without any space, I'm simply writing more like one string, but separated by semicolons. Done. Now here I'm going to hit on save. Now what happened? Whatever the value he is going to select, it should get selected in a variable called, I'll create a travel choice. The variable name is travel choice. Done. Pretty simple. Now let's see if this is working or not. First of all, let's see if it is working or not. And then if he has made some selection, let's say he has made a selection, okay, I want to go through bus. Then if he wants to go through bus, I'll connect a state activity here. Let's say he selects, I want to go through train. I'll give him a action state activity here. If he wants to go through this one, I'll give him like this. So now what happened? These are the three different states. Now the first state is around bus. The second state is for train. And the third state is for flight. Done. Now, as we have all this bus and all that, we have to start designing it. Let's say the customer has selected bus. Now in the transaction 3, if you click, I will say travel choice is equals to, and you have to write bus. Okay. Now let's see if this is first of all working or not. Okay. Bus, and I will go here and I'll pass some message to him and say go to counter number 121, some number I'm giving for bus tickets. I'm providing which counter to go. This is the simple information I'm providing. Now let's say he got that information. At the end, I would give him I'll use another final state. I'll put another final. This can be organized in much better way, but as I'm just doing it live, so I'm just trying to organize as best as possible while I'm recording this. Okay. Now here what would happen if he has clicked on OK, then it should come to the final state. In the final state, I want to put him a message wishing you safe journey. Wishing you safe journey. Clear? Now the same thing for train also we will do. Okay. Now what we will do is simply try to copy this activity. Go here, and the train, I will say go to counter number, let's say 131 for train tickets. Done. The same thing we will do for the flight. I'll go here, copy paste, and I'll say go to 161 for flight tickets. Done. Go back. Now all of this state, look at this, all of these are having error. Okay, reason being, this should be connected. This should be connected. Okay, now for example here I will connect to this one. It should connect to final state, and after having the flight, then I would say safe journey, right? Wishing you safe journey. So I'll connect all of this to the final state. Drag and simply connect. So all are connected to the final state. So this is like wishing you safe journey. Now what happened here? Still I see an error because for train you have not provided a condition. So what is the condition for train? Travel choice is equals to, you have to say train. Okay, and then here I would say for this transition, I'll say travel choice for this one is equals to flight. Done. Pretty simple one. Now let's understand. So how it will work? It will come here, and in this it will say welcome to travel agency customer care. Now he has got two options, OK and cancel. If he cancels, then this button transition get activated and it will go to final state. Now in the final state we have only one entry box. We have kept a message box which is going to say thanks, visit again. Let's say he has clicked on OK. If he has clicked on OK, then it will come here. What is the condition we have provided here? Choice is OK. Then it will come to this box. Now in this box we are providing some options to him: bus, train, flight, and all that. So we are giving some travel choices. Now all of these boxes you can name it as per your choice. Okay, now for the demo purpose I'm just leaving it as it is, but the best practice is to name them based on the activity that you're doing inside. Now let's say customer selected bus. So here there's a transition where I'm saying travel choice is equal to bus. Then it will come to this area. Now in this one, in the T6, I have not put any condition. So you can also have at least one transition without a condition. It is allowed. Okay, one without any condition, it is allowed. You cannot have multiple transitions without conditions. At least one is allowed. For example, let's say just for demo I'm showing. For example, if I'm going to connect this to this, now here there's an error. If you read this, triggerless transition, T6 of state bus must contain a condition. A state can only have one unconditional transition. So you can have one. Remember, it is a very important point. How many unconditional transition can you have in a state? That is one, only one. Okay, remember this is an important point. So here you can see in the message. So let me delete this, because this was unconditional, this is also unconditional. So it is saying you can only have either one. You can't have two unconditional ones. So here in the T6 I didn't put any condition. So it's an unconditional transition. It will simply go. If it comes here, it will go here. Right? So this is done. Now let me run this and see whether it is working or not. Okay. So what is the very first thing is going to happen? It has come to the initial state. And welcome to travel agency customer care. To continue, click on OK. So if you cancel, it will go to final state. We saw that. Now I'm going to click on OK. Now if I'm going to click on OK, I came to this box. Do you see this got highlighted? And in this box, we have kept our input dialog box saying bus, train, and flight. Let's say I'm going to select bus and click on OK. So what would happen after that? It will come to this one. Go to counter number 121 for bus ticket. Click on OK. And after that, it should come to this one, wishing you safe journey. It is coming to the final state, wishing you safe journey. Done. Now let me run it again. Run it again. So here the first initial state is working. Then let's say I'm going to select flight. Flight means here in the second box, we'll select 5. T5 is equal to flight. Then it will come to this box, flight. And here go to counter number 161 for flight tickets. Okay. And then it is coming to wishing you safe journey. So now you got a practical demo of it. Now let us also understand few more things. Inside a state activity, okay, there is something called exit. Now, when this exit will work, I am going to show you. Okay. Now here, look at it. This is the state, right? Input dialog box. Now this exit will only when it will come when you are exiting. Let's say you have made a choice, bus, train, or flight. So whatever choice you have made, you are going to exit out of the state. You will go and enter a different state. So while you are entering a different state, it will work. If it doesn't enter any state, the activity that you're keeping here is not going to work. For example, very important point. So don't think Don't think the activities, let's say you have kept some activity here, message box or something. Don't think after this activity it is going to work. No, it doesn't work like that. It is not a sequence. This is going to work when it enters the state. This is going to work when it exits the state. I mean, when it is going to either bus state, train state, or the flight state. That is where the moment while it is going, before it reaches there, it is going to appear. Now, for example, let me show you. I'll have a log message. Okay, this is generally you can utilize for log messages. So here I'm saying exiting the what is the state, this one state, exiting the what state, input dialog state, right? Input dialog state. So here I'm just asking a input, the travel input dialog, right? So travel input dialog state, log level info. Okay, now let's look at how this is going to work. Save, let me run it. Welcome to travel agency customer care. To continue, click on OK. Done. Now here, look at it. Look at this area, because I've created a log message. If I'm selecting train, let's say, so what would happen? This state will get exit because the train is there. So condition is train. The travel choice is train. Then it'll come to this particular state. So while before it reaches the state, it will write the log message. So for example, if I click on OK, see, it has written exiting the travel input dialog state. So it has written a log message. So while exiting, whatever activity that you have kept, it is going to work. During the execution, it doesn't work. While exit, we have made a choice and it's going to a different state. And that time it will check in the exit box if there is something. So you can see there are two circles. That means I'm using an entry box here. Here I'm using entry and the exit box. You can see there are two symbols. So before you enter here, it is showing the message. Otherwise, that exit box won't work. While exiting only, it will work. Remember this important point. Now go to counter number 131. I got it. And after that, it will come to final state. Wishing you safe journey. Getting it? So now you have got a demo of it. Now, what are the key points? See, at the end, after you have learned all of this thing, what is important is getting the key points. What are the key points? This is very important. Now, I will go to UiPath Academy and show you what are the key points. Okay, the important key points. Now you have seen, I'll read through because it is linked to daily. Okay, leave that. Leave that. So there are three different sections you have learned: entry, exit, transition. Entry section contains the activity that are to be performed when the state is entered, when you enter into the state. Okay. Exit section contains the activity that are to be performed upon exiting the state. That this demonstration I've given you. While exiting only, it was writing the log, right? While it was in that state, it doesn't write. It doesn't work. Only when it exits out of the state, it was writing. Then transition, where you provide the condition. Section lets you add activities that will be performed before switching from the current state to the desired state. So some condition that you provide here. Add activity that will be performed before switching from the current state. And in this transition, there are also a couple of other things, trigger and other options are there. We will discuss that. But again, you understood there is a box in the transition called condition box. A transition are created when you link a state to another state. When they are created, when you're linking it or to a final state within a state machine container. As observed, the condition to transition to destination state, the heat state. For example, when you are writing a condition, that means you're putting a condition when I should go to the next state, like bus and train and all those states we have created. So you had put a condition. Travel choice was bus, so you go to bus. Travel choice was train, so you go to train. Right? So this is a condition, very important property. Now look at the note. This is important. While on the air conditioner is the either in the transition state as the air conditioner process is continuous. No, not this one. I think this is the note. This is the note. Look at it. I'm going to read it. When any non-numerical input, this is about the example given in UiPath Academy. Final state, workflow. Okay, leave that. This is important. Yeah. You can only create one initial state. Very important point. Make a note. What is that? The very first important point is you can only create one initial state. That means because there is one start node in the state machine scope, the first state machine, the state activity that you have connected to the node, so this becomes your initial node. So you can only have one initial state. This you might have seen a question in the practice test. Okay, very important one. You can only create one initial state. Okay, important point to note. Next, yet it is possible to have more than one final state. Another important point, possible to have more than one final state. Next, all state machines must contain an initial state, at least one initial state you should have, right? It has clearly mentioned you can only create one initial state. All state machine must contain an initial state. So how many initial state you can have? Only one, and at least one final state. Final state, remember the final state you can have multiple, you can have more than one. Remember, you can have more than one final state, but you can only create one initial state. So at the end, what they are saying, one initial state you should have in a state machine project, and one or more final state you can have. This is a very important point. In the practice test and a couple of other areas, you will see this question. Okay, very important statement, very important statement. Okay, so this we have learned, right? These are the important points that you have learned. Now I'll stop it here, and I'm going to create some questions for you. I'm going to show you the questions in the practice test on the state machine. With this learning, most of the questions I think you will be able to answer it. So let's see how you are performing in those question sections. So let's move on to our next topic, guys. We are going to learn some of the questions and what should be the right answer and why the other options are wrong around the state machine. So let's get started. The very first question, which of the following is a characteristic of the final state in a state machine? Options are: must have at least one transition configured from the final state. Now for this, to understand this, what you do, simply drag and drop a state machine scope and a state activity and a final state. Just connect to it, okay? So what are the questions we'll understand? The very first point, it says must have at least one transition configured from the final state. No. See, if you open final state, you don't have transition. So from the final state, you can't have a transition. That is the end. That is the end. But from a state activity, you can always have a transition, right? You can't have a transition inside a final state. You can only have entry. So that means this statement is wrong. Option number 2, a state must be connected to a final state. Now, what is the understanding on this question is, for example, a state is connected to final state. Now you might be having a question, what if I am having another state in between? That is also possible, right? A state is connected to this state, and instead of this transition, let's say it is connected like this from this one to this one. So it is talking about the overall project. A state must be a state, at least a state, single state should be connected to a final state. You might be having multiple state activities, but a single state activity should be connected to final state, which is right, at least, right? A state must be connected to final state. So this statement is correct. Now let's look at why these two options are wrong. That is very important during the exam, to understand what is correct and also to understand which options are incorrect. So this is incorrect. Now let's look at the third one. A final state can only transition to another final state activity. No, final state is end. It doesn't transition. So this is also wrong. Now, a final state contains the transition and the exit section. This statement is also wrong because in the final state, we only have what? Entry. So what is the right answer? This is the right answer. Let's see the next question. A process required by the finance team was developed using the state machine architecture. One of those states needs to be able to transition to 4 other different states. So it is saying, let's say there is a state activity. From one state activity, it has to go to 4 other states. Okay, it should move on to another 4 different states. Okay, and all are connected to the initial state, something like that. Okay, So it is going to 4 different states based on the business condition, based on the condition. In which of the following should the transition logic be introduced? Where before it moves from one transition to the other transition, right? Where would you put that logic? Okay, let me clear it. It is too much. Okay, for example, this one. Okay, just take this example. From one state, it has to move to another state. So where would you put that business condition? Okay, in which of the following should the transition logic be introduced? So when it transition, you click on this transition activity, and inside this transition activity you put in the condition, right? This is where you put the logic. Based on the condition, it will move. So the condition is the answer. So here, if you see option number 1, in the entry action of the target state, where it has to go, no, this is wrong, right? In the exit action of the source state, no, you don't put a condition there. So it will only transition, remember, in state machine. From this state, it comes to this state based on this condition. So the answer is always condition. So this is wrong, this is wrong. In the trigger section of the transition, this is also wrong, not in the trigger section. I'll show you how to use the trigger section, but the answer here is in the condition section of the transition. Okay, you always put it in the condition section based on which it will move. Now let's see one more question. In UiPath State Machine project, which activity is mandatory as top level container for defining the overall structure and organization of the automation process? So it is talking about UiPath State Machine. The top level container. What is the top level container? Sequence, state machine, flowchart, while loop. Of course, the answer is state machine. State machine itself is also an activity which works like a container, right? State machine itself is an activity which works like a container. So here your answer is state machine. All right, guys. So most of the relevant questions on the state machines we have covered. Let's move on to our next topic. We are going to learn a very specific technique around the state machine. Here you see a transition activity that is connected from the state machine to the final state. If you click on this transition, there is a section called trigger section. So how to utilize the trigger section, I'm going to show you in this video. So here our topic is around the trigger section of state machine. Now there could also be a question in the transition, how many different sections are there? What is your answer? So here we have a trigger section, condition section, and action section. Remember that in a trigger activity, there are 3 sections. One is known as trigger section. Second one is condition. And the third one is action. Okay, trigger, condition, and action. Now let us go through a demo which is going to explain how this trigger, condition, and action can be utilized. Now for this, we have to take some demo. What is the demo? Here is my application. In this application, if anyone clicks on this submit button, what is it? Because I'm using trigger, right? So if anybody clicks on the submit button, the click trigger should get activated. And once the click trigger get activated, it should move to the final state. Getting it? Anybody clicking on the submit button will activate the transition. So from here it will flow to final state. Okay, now for that, the very first thing we will do in the entry section, I'm going to add the activity use application browser activity. Let me drag and drop this. Here I'm going to click on indicate and I'm going to indicate this application. Done. Now once I have indicated the application, I'll go to the next. Here there's a transition. Inside this transition, the very first activity I'm going to drag and drop is the trigger scope activity, because you know all the trigger activity needs to be kept inside the trigger scope. Okay, so I'm saying trigger scope, and here is the trigger scope activity. This trigger section, I'm going to drag and drop a trigger scope activity. After that, here I have to drag a trigger activity. For example, click trigger. Here our demo is around click trigger. So I'll drag and drop the click trigger activity. Here, let's indicate element on screen and indicate the submit button. Done. So it has indicated the submit button. After that, in the trigger scope activity, there is also a section called arcs and action section. Okay. Here there is a sequence. There is a blank sequence by default. In this one, let me drag and drop an assign activity. And here, let me create a Boolean variable called clicked, which is going to store if somebody clicking on the submit button, the value will become true. It will come to the action section. So when this click trigger gets activated, it always comes to the action section. And here, whatever you have defined, it is going to work. So here I have used a Boolean variable called clicked. So let's change the variable type to Boolean and let's set this one to state machine, the scope. All right. Here, let me put a value called true, the Boolean value true. By default, I will keep the clicked value as false, the default value. All done. Now, the moment anybody clicks, what happens? The clicked variable is going to get the value called true, because once it is clicked, it will move to the action section and here it will gain the value. After that, in the transition activity, there is the next section called condition. In the condition section, I'm going to say clicked is equals to, you can simply write the variable or else you can simply also say true. If the clicked value becomes true, then I want to log a message and I'm going to say user clicked on submit button. So it is going to log it and I'm going to keep it as information. Simple. Now you have learned how to use the trigger section and you have also learned how to use the condition section and action section. Okay. Now, if the condition meets, then it should enter the final state. In the final state, let's add one more log message activity. And here I will say entered the final state. These experiments are very important so that you understand how the workflow logically flows from one section to the other section in the state machine. So now we have understood. Here I have kept only very simple activity called use open. It will just open that application. And once it has opened the application, if it is already open, it will leave it as it is. You know, right? There are a couple of properties that you can also utilize. For example, this one, I will say open if not open. You can set all this. Done. And next it will come to the transition where it will continuously monitor the submit button. Anybody clicking on the submit button, then it will come to the action section. And here the value is getting true. And here I'm put a condition, clicked is equal to true. Then it will come to the log message saying user clicked on the submit button. Pretty simple workflow. Now after this, let me quickly debug this so that we understand how the workflow is working. All right. All right. So the automation started running. Now let's see the status. So here, this is the application. You can see it has started running. So I'll go here and it has been activated, right? You can see it is executed. That means the application is currently open. Now it is continuously going to monitor if somebody is going to click on submit button. Let me go here and open the transition. Now the transition, you can see it is continuously monitoring. Now there's one important thing that I forgot. That is when you use a click trigger, it continuously monitor. Now to break that sequence of monitoring, you must use a break activity. Very important point. To break the sequence of your trigger scope activity, you have to use a break activity. So it breaks the loop and goes to move on to the next section. Otherwise, it will always be inside that section. So let me debug it once again. Okay. All right. So the automation has started. You can see the browser is already open. So it got executed. And then if I go to the transition section, here it is just waiting if somebody is going to click on the submit button or not. Now let's say I'm going to click here. See, nothing is working, right? You can see this activity did not run yet. Now the moment I'm going to hit on submit, look at it. If I'm going to hit on submit, look at it. I'll keep it this side. I'm going to click on submit. And what would happen? This click trigger activity is waiting. The moment I hit on submit, look at it, what's going to happen. Submit, you can see it has immediately came to this particular section. And now if you look at your output, it said user clicked on the submit button, entered the final state. So it has entered the final state where we have kept that activity, log message activity. So if you look at the output, all these things has happened. So now what happened, your workflow has moved from this state to the final state as per the transition that you have kept. So in the transition, the condition was simple. We have used a trigger scope and it has monitored whether somebody is clicking on the click button or not. Based on that, the value has been transferred to the click variable. And then based on the condition, it logged it and it went to final state. Pretty simple. Please do try this out. I'm going to show you one of the questions that is there in the UiPath Academy practice test. Let's answer that. We are going to answer a question on the transition activity. Now, when you hear this transition activity, it is part of your state machine. Let's read the question. In a UiPath state machine, what are the three sections found within a transition activity when it's expanded? Okay, the options are entry, condition and action, entry, exit and transitions, trigger, condition, exit, trigger, condition and action. Now, which one of these are right? Now, this might confuse you. Transition activity. What is a transition activity? In my previous demo, you might have already seen it, but let me show you. The moment you have a state activity and you are connecting it to, let's say, another state, another activity of state machine, let's say end state or any other state. The moment you keep it, what happens? A transition get created. For example, if I'm going to drag and drop, let's say another state activity. The moment I drag and drop, so what happened? Another activity that get added, this is known as transition. If you click on it, you can see that activity. So this is what it is talking about. This transition activity contains three different sections. What are they? Trigger, condition and action. Trigger, condition, action. Okay, so here your option is trigger, condition and action. Where do you find this documentation? This is the documentation. I'll pass this link in the description of the video. You can have a check. Here if you see, the transition activity cannot be dragged from the activities panel like a conventional activity. It is generated when you link a state to another state or to a final state. Just now we saw it. So very important point, you cannot drag this activity from the activity panel. It gets automatically created when you link it, when you link a state to another state or final state. Within a state machine container, this activity helps you input conditions under which the automation project can pass from one state to another. So what is the purpose? To pass from one state to another state. Pretty simple. Okay, you can find out more. Okay, leave that. Now look at this option. States can be linked to multiple transitions. So you can link one state to multiple transitions, right? For example, if I drag and drop another state here, now can I link it? Yes. So you can have multiple different states. States can be linked to multiple transitions. So you can see one state has got now two transitions. Like that, you can have more than one, each describing a possible way to pass from a state to another. Clear? Very important. And we saw this condition, the condition under which the state can be transcended. That means it can move from one state to another state. And in the previous video, I have given complete demo. That demo is very important. Please do have a check. Okay, so I hope you'll be able to why this answer is correct. Trigger, condition and action. So thank you. Now I have another slide prepared and have created few questions, and these questions are framed based on this particular documentation. Now let's see if you can answer those questions as well. So here it is. Now let's go through these questions and see if you can answer them. Let's get started. The very first question: which of the following statement is about the transition activity in UiPath state machine is correct? Options are: A, the transition activity can be dragged from the activities panel directly. So just now you cannot do it, right? So this is a wrong answer. B, it helps input conditions for passing from one state. So there is a condition in the transition, this one, for passing from one state to another within a state machine container. Is this right? C, line breaks are supported in the condition expression field. Is this one correct? D, it only accepts string variable. So what is the right option? Please do comment. Okay, you commenting on my videos are very important. So please do comment. It is nice to always see people are participating for the effort that I have put to create and help you guys in different ways. Now here the answer, let me reveal, it is B. It helps input conditions for passing from one state to another. Hope you have commented the same option. Question number 2. What does the transition activity allow you to define within a state machine in UiPath? Options are, now always read these options carefully. This might confuse you and you might go and select a wrong answer. So be very careful. State execution order, the conditions for moving from one state to another. What do you use this transition activity for? C, activities to be performed within each state. Do you define the activities to be performed within each state? Or state machine display names? What do you really use it for? Now please do comment your answer. I'm pretty sure most of you will go right on this question because this is pretty simple. You use the transition for writing conditions, right? The conditions for moving from one state to another. Let's see the question number 3. What is notable about the relationship between states and transitions in a state machine? Options are, each transition can move between multiple states. So each transition, can the transition move, or from one state to another state you move through the transition? Okay. B, states can have only one transition. A state can only have one transition. Is that true? C, states can be linked to multiple transitions. From a single state, you can link it to multiple transitions. D, transitions are limited to linking to two states only. You can only link it to two different states. Now, out of this, what is the right one? Please do comment your answer. Okay. I hope you have already commented. Now let me reveal the answer. The answer is states can be linked to multiple transitions. From one state, you can link to multiple different, you can have multiple transitions from one state and connect to other different states. All right, guys, I hope you have given all the answers correctly. Now let's move on to our next topic. We are going to learn a new technique. If you see in the transition, there are two conditions. Do you see the condition here? And there's a condition here. The first one goes to get transaction data and the second condition goes to end process state. Now here the question is, if you look at both the conditions are same, system exception is not nothing, system exception is not nothing. So the question it is asking, what would happen if the system exception is not nothing, both the conditions are same, is the successful is going to run or the system exception, this block is going to run. Now have you seen any kind of a transition like that where you have two conditions? How to do that? Everything, before we completely go through this question, we will first go through a demo. So let's get started. First thing, let me drag and drop a state machine activity. Let me expand this, drag and drop a state activity here, and in this below this I'm going to add one state activity and one final state activity. Okay, so here I will name it as, let's say, end state, just to correlate with the question. I'm going to say end state, and this one, let's say I'm going to say it as get transaction data. Okay, now here in this state, from this state, let's say I'm going to connect it to this state, get transaction data, and the get transaction data anyways after it finishes, it will come to the end state. If you click on this transition, which comes from the initial state to get transaction state. So let me name it as initial state. Here in between there is a transition. So if you double click on this, here you see only one condition. Okay, so let me create a condition. For that, in the initial state activity, let me create a input dialog box. Okay, and here I'm going to say enter a number, and the number, let me create a variable, and I will say choice, and this variable, let's make it as an integer type. Okay, now the condition that I'm going to make in this one, if the customer is entering 1, then it should come here. If the customer entering 2, it should go to different state. Let me click on this transition. So the variable that we know is choice. Okay, so here I'm saying choice is equals to 1. If the customer is selecting choice is equals to 1, then it should go to get transaction data. In this below here, you find something called add shade trigger transition. So let me click here. And here I can select the another state. So let me select the end state. The moment you select, what would happen? If you see the question that you saw where you had a trigger and there are two conditions. If you compare this with this picture, you can see there's a condition here. The first one, T1, and a T3 got created, and there's a condition here. Okay. Now what is this T3? It is connecting to end state. If you go back to the main, you can see when you have created a shade transition, what happened? It is actually another transition called T3 which got connected to end state. Okay, but again, if you click on it, you see two conditions are written. So the question also has a similar kind of a picture where you have a condition and below that you have another condition. So looking at it, you should not get confused. Now this would have given you clear picture. You know, the moment you click on add shade trigger, this is how it get created. Now let's say here I'm going to say choice is equals to 2. If customer is entering 2, then what happened? It should actually go to end state. It should actually enter to end state. Now in this action section, let me add a simple message box, and I will say, just to understand how it flows. Okay, here I'm saying entered T1 transaction 1. Okay, or just to make it more like the question, you can name it like successful, right? How it is defined in this question, successful. So I'm naming it as successful, and here let me name it as system exception. Okay, so here I'm saying entered successful, entered system exception. Entered system exception. Okay, so this is the message box which will appear if it at all comes here. Now look at it. Let's understand how it flows first of all. If I'm going to debug this, in the initial state, we have kept the input dialog box, right? So it is asking enter a number. If I enter 1, what happens? Then because 1, then it should get into get transaction data, right? So if I click on OK, so what happened? It says entered successful. So it is taking this route. Okay, and then it goes. Now here, just to understand whether it is coming to this state or not, I am also going to add a message box and say entered get transaction data state. Okay, just to ensure to understand the flow. Then if it comes to end state, then it should say entered end state. Done. Now let's go and run it once again. So here once again, let's, if I say 1, what would happen? Click OK. So it entered successful transition, and then if you click OK, then it says entered get transaction data state. Now from here it will go to end state. and here we have not defined any condition. So conditionless transition can also be created. So it entered the end state. Understood? Now if I run it again, if I enter 2 and click on OK, it will take this route. See, it took the system exception route. Okay, this route, system exception route, entered system exception, and then it will enter the end state. Getting it? Now the question actually is, if both your values are same, let me come here and click on the successful. If I make choice is equal to 1 and let's say choice is equal to 1. So here both the conditions are same. Now the question is whether it will go to the successful or it will follow the system exception path when the values are 1. Let's say you are entering the value 1. Will it go this way or will it go this way? That is the question. Slightly tricky, right? Or is it going to give an error? Now let me tell you what is going to happen. If I'm going to run this, okay, and now it is asking enter a number. Do you think it will give an error? Because here also you have put a condition called 1. So will it come this way? Here also you have put a condition called 1. Will it come this way? Now let me answer you. For example, if I'm going to enter 1 here and click on OK. Now which path it took? It actually took the successful path. You know why it is not taking the system exception path? Because if you look at the sequence in the transition, the very first thing I've written is successful. So whatever is there on the top, it will just take that route when both the conditions do match. Click OK and entered, it entered here, get transition data, and then it goes to end state. So you understood the flow. So remember, anytime you see this kind of a question where the conditions are both same, whatever you have mentioned here, because it will run in a sequential order, right? So here it will see choice is equal to it met, so it will go to get transaction data. So it will not at all work on this one. So you can see this got checked, but it did not come here because it already met the condition, the first one. So whatever is there on the top, that will take precedence. Now let's read this question. Let's read this question. Now here the question is, a developer found a bug in one of transitions shown below. Both conditions are same. So if you see system exception is nothing, is not nothing, that means there is a system exception. System exception is not nothing, so that means there is a system exception. So if a system exception has occurred, as per the bug, as per the design the developer has done, what would happen? It will take the successful route. So if you see here, it is mentioned successful. So it will take the successful transition. And here if you look at, the condition is same and the transition path is known as system exception. It won't take the system exception. It won't go to end process it. First it will go to get transaction data. Getting it? So here the question is, what transition or transitions will be executed? Do you think both of them will get executed or one transition will get executed? Here are your options. Will it go to system exception, successful, right? These are all transition names. No condition. The state will remain in a hanging state. Will it go in a hanging state? Successful and system exception. So we already saw that it was going to successful in this particular demo. So the answer is successful, and we pretty clearly saw that in this demo when the values are same, it always take the first one which is mentioned, which is successful.